All right, you history nerds, let's cut the crap and get straight to the good stuff. Today, we're diving headfirst into this batshit crazy rebellion you've probably never heard of, the Ragamuffin War.
The what?
The Ragamuffin War.
Oh,
Yeah, picture Brazil in the 1800s, but instead of biches and samba, we've got cowboys, cattle, and a whole lot of beef jerky drama. Think of it as a South American Wild West, with a dash of political intrigue and a sprinkle of Italian spice.
that's a pretty damn good way to put it. The Ragamuffin War, or the Farroupilha Revolution if you're feeling fancy, is a prime example of how seemingly small economic squabbles can blow up into a decade-long shitstorm that almost tears a country apart.
And hold on to your hats, folks, because this beef jerky drama wasn't just about some local turf war. It actually had ripple effects that reached all the way to Europe, with none other than Giuseppe Garibaldi. You know, that dude who unified Italy, cutting his teeth in the Brazilian backlands.
You're not kidding. Garibaldi's time fighting alongside the Ragamuffins was basically a boot camp for his future revolutionary exploits.
So let's break this whole thing down. We're talking about Rio Grande do Sul, the southernmost state of Brazil, right?
Right.
What was the deal with this place back then?
Well,
Why were these gauchos, as they called them, so pissed off about beef jerky?
Rio Grande do Sul was like Brazil's Texas. Rugged, independent, and with an economy built on cattle ranching. These gauchos were basically the Brazilian cowboys. Their lives revolved around cattle and shark, which is their word for dried, salted beef, like beef jerky, but way more badass.
So charcoal was like their gold, their oil, their bread and butter, all rolled into one.
You got it.
Okay.
And here's where the shit hits the fan. Uruguay and Argentina, Rio Grande do Sul's neighbors, were also cranking out tons of shark, and theirs was cheaper.
Okay.
This pissed off the gauchos because it was undercutting their market and squeezing their profits.
So we've got a classic case of economic rivalry. Undercut the competition, crush the little guy, the story of globalization, am I right?
Pretty much. But to make matters worse, the Brazilian government slapped some taxes on local shark production
Oh, no.
while giving a free pass to the imported stuff.
Oh, come on.
It was like they were intentionally trying to screw over the gauchos.
Talk about adding fuel to the fire. So the gauchos are already pissed off about the shark situation, and then the government comes along and kicks them in the balls. What the hell did they expect was going to happen?
Well, they probably didn't expect a full-blown rebellion, but that's exactly what they got. The appointment of this new provincial president, a real hardliner named Antonio Rodrigues Fernandes Braga, was the spark that ignited the powder keg. This guy basically waltzed in on his first day in office and accused a bunch of farmers of being separatists.
Talk about a dick move. I mean, accusing your own people of treason before you've even unpacked your bags, that's some grade A leadership right there.
It was a colossal blunder.
Yeah.
The gauchos, already on edge about the shark situation and feeling ignored by the central government, saw this as a direct attack on their regional pride and autonomy.
So they decided to tell the government to go fuck themselves.
Pretty much. On September 20th, 1835, shit got real. General Bento Gonçalves, a prominent gaucho leader with a serious set of balls, and his ragtag band of rebels decided they'd had enough. They stormed Porto Alegre, the capital of Rio Grande do Sul,
Okay.
captured it without breaking a sweat, and basically told the Brazilian Empire to kiss their ass.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how the Ragamuffin War kicked off.
You got it.
Now let's talk about this name, Ragamuffins. Where the hell did that come from? It sounds like something you call a bunch of street urchins, not a group of hardened revolutionaries.
Well, the name actually comes from the fringed leather outfits that the gauchos wore. Farrapos, in Portuguese, literally translates to rags, and it was initially used as a derogatory term by the imperial forces to mock these rebels. But the Ragamuffins, being the badass motherfuckers they were, embraced the name, turned it into a badge of honor, a symbol of their defiance.
So it's like those punk rockers in the 70s who took the word punk and made it their own. Yeah, we're punks, what about it? Love it.
Exactly.
So these Ragamuffins, they capture Porto Alegre, they tell the empire to go screw themselves, what's their next move? Did they just declare war on Brazil?
They went even further. They declared independence, forming their own republic. The Rio Grandense Republic, with Bento Gonçalves as their president. They even drafted their own constitution outlining their vision for a free and independent Rio Grande do Sul.
Holy shit. A republic built on beef jerky and balls.
Yeah.
These guys weren't messing around. And how did the Brazilian Empire react to this? Did they shit their pants?
They weren't too happy about it, to say the
I
least.
bet.
The Empire saw this as a direct challenge to their authority and immediately sent troops to crush the rebellion. But the Ragamuffins, being masters of guerrilla warfare, thanks in part to the tactics they'd learned from fighting alongside indigenous tribes for years, managed to hold their ground and inflict some serious damage on the Imperial forces.
So we've got a full-blown war going on now. Ragamuffins versus the Empire, beef jerky versus the central government, and somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, we've got this valiant dude, Giuseppe Garibaldi, showing up with his wife, Anita, ready to join the party.
Garibaldi arrived in Brazil in 1836, looking for adventure and a chance to put his revolutionary ideals into practice.
Okay.
He hooked up with the Ragamuffins and quickly proved himself to be a skilled military leader, leading daring raids and spreading the rebellion to the neighboring province of Santa Catarina.
So Garibaldi was like, fuck Italy, I'm going to Brazil to fight for beef jerky and freedom.
Something like that.
Yeah.
He was drawn to the Ragamuffin cause, seeing it as a fight against tyranny and oppression. He even met his future wife, Anita, while fighting alongside the rebels, talk about a meet cute.
A love story forged in the fires of revolution. That's some Hollywood shit right there. So we've got our ragtag band of rebels led by Bento Gonçalves, joined by this badass Italian revolutionary and his warrior wife, Anita. They're holding their own against the might of the Brazilian Empire.
Yeah.
And they've even got their own republic going on. This is getting good. But wait, I thought you said this beef jerky war lasted for a decade. We've barely scratched the surface here. What the hell happened next?
Well, let's not forget, the Ragamuffin army wasn't just a bunch of cowboys and Italian hotheads. They had a pretty diverse crew, including a lot of freed slaves who were ready to fight for their newfound liberty and land.
Hold up. Freed slaves. So were these guys fighting alongside the white Gacuchos? That's pretty wild, considering, slavery and all that shit.
Yeah, it was a pretty unique situation. The Ragamuffins, desperate for manpower and seeing an opportunity to strike a blow against the Empire's reliance on slave labor, offered freedom to any slaves who joined their ranks. And let me tell you, a lot of those slaves were more than ready to take them up on that offer. They formed their own units, most famously the Black Lancers, a cavalry unit that became legendary for their badassery and fighting skills.
Black Lancers, now that's a fucking awesome name. So these guys were basically fighting a two-front war against the Empire for their freedom and alongside the Ragamuffins for, well, what exactly? Were they all in on this whole beef jerky republic thing?
It was complicated, man. For the Black Lancers, the Ragamuffin War was a chance to seize their own freedom, carve out a place for themselves in this new republic they were trying to build. But let's be real, the Ragamuffins' motives were a mixed bag. Some of them were true believers in this idea of a free and independent Rio Grande do Sul, but others were just in it for the money, the power, the chance to stick it to the Empire. And yeah, there were definitely some hypocrites in the mix. Slave-owning gauchos fighting for liberty and all that bullshit.
So it sounds like this Ragamuffin War was more fucked up and messy than a Brazilian soap opera. But hey, that's history for you always. A whole lot of gray areas and contradictions. But let's get back to these Black Lancers. These guys sound like total badasses. Were they really that good in a fight?
Oh, they were the real deal, man. These guys were fierce warriors, expert horsemen, and masters of the lance. They were known for their lightning-fast charges, their ability to outmaneuver the enemy, and their sheer ruthlessness in battle. They played a crucial role in many Ragamuffin victories, striking fear into the hearts of the Imperial troops.
Damn, I can almost picture it now. A horde of Black Lancers, lances glinting in the sun, charging across the pampas, screaming for freedom and vengeance. That's some cinematic shit right there. So how did the Empire deal with these guys? Did they try to wipe them out?
The Empire definitely saw the Black Lancers as a major threat. They tried to crush them with brute force, but the Lancers were too damn good. They knew the terrain, they were masters of guerrilla tactics, and they had a burning desire for freedom that made them nearly unstoppable.
Okay, so we've got this epic war raging across southern Brazil. Ragamuffins, Black Lancers, Garibaldi and his warrior wife all raising hell against the Empire. But you said this shit lasted for a decade. How did it all finally end? Did one side just completely crush the other?
Not exactly. By 1845, both sides were pretty much exhausted. The war had taken a heavy toll, and it was clear that neither side was going to win outright.
So what, did they just call it a draw and go grab a beer together?
Not quite. But they did come to the negotiating table. A new leader emerged on the imperial side, Luiz Alves de Lima e Silva, later known as the Duke of Caxias. This guy was a smart cookie, a brilliant military strategist, and, more importantly, a shrewd politician. He realized that crushing the rebellion completely would only create more resentment and instability in the long run, so he decided to try a different approach, a negotiation and reconciliation.
So this Duke guy was basically like, hey, let's cut the crap and make a deal.
Pretty much. He offered the Ragamuffins a surprisingly generous peace treaty, the Treaty of Poncho Verde, signed in 1845. This treaty granted full amnesty to all the rebels, integrated them into the Imperial Army, including the Black Lancers, and, get this, addressed their main economic grievance, that whole beef jerky tax situation.
Wait, so after a decade of war, bloodshed, and all that bullshit, the Empire basically said, okay, fine, we'll protect your precious beef jerky market. What the f...
Well, it was more complicated than that, of course. The Empire recognized that the Gauchos had legitimate grievances, and that ignoring them would only lead to more trouble down the road. The Treaty of Poncho Verde was a way to appease the rebels, bring them back into the fold, and stabilize the region. It was a pretty pragmatic move, all things considered.
So basically, the Ragamuffins won, right? I mean, they got their beef jerky protection, they got amnesty, they even got to join the army if they wanted. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
It was a victory of sorts, yeah. They didn't achieve full independence, but they secured a significant degree of autonomy and got most of their demands met. And let's not forget, the Black Lancers got their freedom, which was a huge win in itself.
All right, so the Ragamuffins get their beef jerky, the Black Lancers get their freedom, and the Empire avoids a full-blown civil war. Sounds like everyone went home happy. Except, wait a minute, what about Garibaldi? What happened to our Italian stallion after all this Brazilian drama?
Garibaldi and Anita decided to pack their bags and head back to Europe shortly after the treaty was signed. He took all the badass guerrilla warfare skills he learned fighting alongside the Ragamuffins and applied them to a new cause unifying Italy.
So this beef jerky war in Brazil actually played a role in the unification of fucking Italy. That's some mind-blowing shit right there. Talk about unexpected consequences.
It's a testament to how seemingly isolated events can have ripple effects that extend far beyond their immediate context. Garibaldi's time in Brazil shaped his military thinking, his revolutionary zeal, and ultimately, his destiny.
But let's circle back to those Black Lancers for a minute. You said they got their freedom in the treaty, but was that really the end of their story? Did they just seamlessly integrate into Brazilian society and live happily ever after?
Not exactly. Life for the Black Lancers after the war was still pretty damn tough. Even though they were legally free, they still faced discrimination, prejudice, and limited opportunities. The reality on the ground was a lot more complicated than the words on paper.
So even though they won their freedom on the battlefield, they still had to fight for their place in society. That's some fucked up shit, man.
Yeah, it's a reminder that winning a war doesn't always mean winning true equality and justice. The fight for those things is often a long and hard one, even after the guns have fallen silent.
All right, so let's wrap this up. What are the lasting effects of this whole Ragamuffin War? Did it change Brazil in any significant way? Or was it just a blip on the radar screen of history?
The Ragamuffin War was far from a blip. It forced the empire to confront its own weaknesses, to modernize its army, and to recognize the importance of regional autonomy and economic fairness.
So even though they didn't win their independence, the Ragamuffins still managed to shake things up and leave a lasting mark on Brazil.
Absolutely. The war sowed the seeds for future rebellions and ultimately contributed to the downfall of the monarchy and the establishment of the Brazilian Republic in 1889.
So beef jerky, Black Lancers, Garibaldi, and the birth of a republic, not bad for a bunch of pissed-off cowboys and their ragtag army. What do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from this whole crazy saga?
I think it's the realization that history is made not only by kings and empires, but also by ordinary people fighting for their beliefs, their livelihoods, and their freedom. The Ragamuffin War, for all its complexities and contradictions, is a testament to the power of those struggles and a reminder that even seemingly lost causes can have unexpected and profound consequences.
And hey, next time you're chowing down on some beef jerky, take a moment to remember the Ragamuffins, the Black Lancers, and all those who fought for a better world, one piece of dried meat at a time.
Cheers to that. You know, we've talked a lot about the Gauchos, the Black Lancers, Garibaldi, but there's another group of players in this whole Ragamuffin drama that we haven't really touched on yet.
Who's that?
The indigenous tribes.
Yeah, right. The native Brazilians.
Yeah.
Weren't they caught in the crossfire of all this beef jerky bullshit, too?
No, big time. Rio Grande do Sul was home to a number of indigenous tribes. And they got dragged into this conflict, whether they liked it or not. Some tribes sided with the Ragamuffins, seeing them as allies against the empire.
Okay.
Others stayed loyal to the crown,
Mm.
and some just tried to stay the fuck out of the way and survive.
So it was a real clusterfuck with alliances shifting all over the
Oh,
place.
yeah.
I bet that made things even more complicated for everyone involved.
You can say that again. The indigenous tribes had their own agendas, their own beefs with the empire, their own ways of fighting. Adding them to the mix just threw another layer of complexity onto an already chaotic situation.
Damn, I'm starting to get a headache just thinking about all the different factions and motivations involved in this war. So what happened to these indigenous tribes after all the dust settled? Did they get a seat at the negotiating table when the Treaty of Poncho Verde was signed?
Sadly, no. The indigenous tribes were pretty much screwed over in the peace process.
Oh, come on.
Their interests were largely ignored, their sacrifices forgotten. They were seen as pawns in a bigger game, their lands and cultures treated as bargaining chips by both the Ragamuffins and the Empire.
That's some cold-blooded shit, man. They fought and bled alongside the Ragamuffins, and then they were just tossed aside like yesterday's garbage.
It's a tragic story that's been repeated throughout history.
Yeah.
Indigenous peoples often get caught in the crossfire of conflicts, their voices silenced, their rights trampled on. The Ragamuffin War is just one more example of that pattern.
So even a revolution fought in the name of freedom and equality can end up betraying those who are most vulnerable.
Right.
It's a sobering reminder that even the best intentions can lead to fucked up outcomes.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
The Ragamuffin War, for all its revolutionary fervor and its focus on economic justice, ultimately did little to improve the lives of the indigenous people of Rio Grande do Sul.
So it was a victory for beef jerky and regional autonomy. But not so much for indigenous rights. That's a pretty damn depressing thought.
It is what it is, man. History is full of these kinds of contradictions and moral failings. It's our job to learn from them, to acknowledge the complexities of the past, and to strive for a more just and equitable future.
All right, so let's zoom out for a minute and consider the bigger picture. We've talked about the Ragamuffin War's impact on Brazil, on Italy, on the lives of the gauchos, the black lancers, and the indigenous tribes. But how does this whole crazy saga fit into the grand scheme of things? What's the takeaway for our listeners beyond the fact that beef jerky can apparently spark revolutions?
The Ragamuffin War is a reminder that history is not just a collection of dates and battles, but a story of human struggle, ambition, and resilience. It's a story about the fight for freedom, for autonomy, for a better life, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Yeah.
It's also a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of actions, the complexities of alliances, and the need to always consider the perspectives of those who are most marginalized and vulnerable.
Damn, that's deep, man. I feel like I need a drink after all that historical heavy lifting.
Me too, buddy. Me too.
All right, folks, that's the end of our deep dive into the Ragamuffin War, a tale of beef jerky betrayal and the enduring fight for freedom.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, explored some pretty dark corners of history, and hopefully learned a thing or two along the way. So next time you're firing up the grill or cracking open a bag of beef jerky, remember the Ragamuffins, the Black Lancers, the indigenous tribes, and all those who fought for a better world, one bloody, messy, and often contradictory step at a time.
And never underestimate the power of a good piece of dried meat.
Damn right. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep digging for those hidden gems of history. Peace out.